Hello, my name is Jim Gurman and welcome to today's episode of
Kilimanjaro.
Today we're going to be taking a look at the Milwaukee M12 right angle die grinder. So this is the model 2485. This one has the head obviously at a right angle. There's another version very similar that has the head twisted 90 degrees and that can let you get into a little more finer places, have a little bit more control than the one with the right angle. So some of the features of this has a paddle style trigger on here. It's all made out of metal, which is nice. However, it's not the easiest to use, right? So you have to flip this safety up and then you can push it down. But sometimes it feels like that catches if you're not real careful using it. I've always found this style, if the ones that are designed well and work well, you don't really notice. You just grab it, you pull it up, and it's not something you ever even think about. This one, on the other hand, I've had it a couple times where I couldn't get it to start, and I've had to use two hands to do it. Not super fan of that. It is nice that it's all metal as well. This switch is also pretty beefy in here. It has a little light down here at the bottom that you can see when I turn it on. And that's supposed to shine up at your workpiece, let you see what you're doing. I haven't found it super useful. Most of the time I'm working in a brightly lit area, though. It's certainly better than not having it, right? If you're using a pneumatic tool, which is what this is mostly going to compete with, you're never going to have an LED mounted on the tool. That's just not something that works. On the back side here, you have 4 different speed controls. Problem with this, first off, you can barely tell which speed setting it's in. The light on the 4 numbers here is very dim. And also, the only way to tell what speed it is with this little sticker that's on here, which obviously, as soon as you get it, you're going to take off and completely forget the speeds. Never that you really need to know the exact speed, but it would be nice, there's plenty of room on here. They could have just engraved those speeds right on here. The other thing is you can't, if the tool is running, you can't change the speed while it's running. You have to stop it. That was at the fastest speed, 4, and then start it. You can hear a little difference there. If I push the button while it's running, it doesn't do anything. So I feel like that's a little irritating because most of the time when I'm using it, the way I realize that it's going too slowly or not is that I hear it and then I want to push it right away and then I have to wait for it to stop and everything. Speaking of starting and stopping, it does have a nice little slow start, slow stop feature, so it doesn't torque out. It doesn't give you a lot of torque on the hand as you're trying to do it, which is nice if you're working in a confined space. You don't want to hit anything that you're trying to very carefully get on. Let's take a minute here and open this up. I want to see if this size here has to be this big because this is all full of stuff, or if it's really just to the size of the battery and they want to keep the battery the same size going through here. It's really a little bit bigger diameter than I'd really like to be comfortable. So let me finish unscrewing it here. We can take a look. So this is something that's really interesting and surprised me. It's actually 2 different pieces. I didn't notice that before I opened it up here. So the top piece here is one separate piece. You can see that kind of comes apart like that. And it's got this rubber bushing in between the top part and the lower part. I assume that's done to prevent vibration from going from the top part into the bottom part, which is really nice. It's not something I really noticed that there was no vibration when I was using it, but it definitely is something that should help with the vibrations. So in here, there's definitely enough room that they could have shrunk this in diameter here, but I didn't really realize just how far up this battery goes. So the battery goes all the way up to there. One of the big questions here is which style should you get? Should you get the style that's in line, the more traditional style, or should you get this right angle style, which has existed for a while, but it's less common. And I think a lot of that is going to come down to personal preference, but a lot of it is also going to come down to the type of work you mostly use this for. So if you're mostly using these typical carbide burrs to grind out a mold or a die, as the name of the tool suggests, then this is probably not the right style. You probably want the other style. It's a little bit more compact. It's a little easier to get into fine details and control that way. However, if you're using these sanding discs, this is a little kit I got off on Amazon. It was like 20 bucks. Has a whole plethora of different sanding discs on there. It's also got some paint stripping discs, some Scotch-Brite discs. So these just twist on right like that. These go in here, and I think if you're using a lot of these, if you're doing a lot of sanding, these strip paint really well. If you're doing stuff like that, then I think this style is actually a lot nicer to use. It's a lot more comfortable to be going like this than to try to go like that the whole time. It still works perfectly well for using these style of bits as well, but I think it's a little more awkward. You can also always hold it up here with two hands, and that can make it a little bit easier with these styles. One thing that I do like about this, so it's got a 1/4 inch collet, so it can use these more traditional kind of big, larger bits. However, they make these little collet adapters. So this is an 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch collet adapter, and that lets you use these smaller. I've got a set of these diamond encrusted bits that only have an 1/8 inch shaft, or you can use the typical Dremel accessories, which can be nice. There's some kind of random ones of those, like these flap wheels, or if you're in a bind, they actually have these at Home Depot where they don't usually have carbide burrs so easily accessible. To change the bits, they give you these two nice little wrenches here. It's nice that they're two separate sizes, so if you happen to lose these and you only have one set of other wrenches, you can still get them off. If they were the same size, you would have to use like an adjustable or something on one of them. So you put one on here, and just loosen it that way. If it's still stuck, you might need to keep twisting this, and then it'll get to the end of the travel, and then you can twist it a little bit more, and that should loosen it up. Then you put your new bit in, and then you just tighten it down. One thing I have noticed though is you got to be careful. If you were to hold it like this, you can whack your hand on the trigger while you're trying to tighten it up or while you're trying to break it loose, which is a bit of a bummer. Obviously, I would have preferred to see this to be a toolless tool change. I'm not sure I've ever seen any die grinder or router. This is very similar to a router collet that has a toolless tool change though. I have seen some though that only need one wrench, which would be a little bit better. You know, there's some that you can push a button and then you can do that way. It's probably a little less durable. This is probably a little more durable to have the two wrenches, and you know, if you're going to have one tool that you need, having two tools isn't that big a deal. I really like this tool, particularly compared to some of the pneumatic die grinders that I've used in the past. So it's so much more convenient to not have to deal with the air hose, not have to deal with the compressor, the noise of the compressor, the noise that the pneumatic tools make. They say in the box that this one's 20% more powerful. I don't know that I buy that. I don't know what it's compared to. It's kind of nonsense. However, I will say that I've never had an issue with this having enough power. Always seems to have plenty of power. The batteries seem to last quite long on it. This isn't the sort of tool that you're going to be using for hours on end. And I've never had an issue with running out of power on batteries. So compared to a pneumatic die grinder, I do think it's a great tool. However, I will say there are a couple of drawbacks on it. The first is this handle here. I really don't like the trigger, and I think the handle should be a little bit smaller diameter. I have quite large hands, and I still think it's too big a diameter, too large a diameter. So if you have smaller hands, it's probably not going to be as comfortable. That being said, most pneumatic die grinders have a very similar size on the handle. The other thing is the price. So this one costs about $175. That's with the bare tool without any of the batteries, and obviously the batteries go up from there. Some of the die grinders, you can get a cheap die grinder for, you know, 20, 30 bucks, not a big deal. However, of course, on the other end, there are, you know, a Dotco costs upwards of $500, so it kind of depends on what you're comparing it to. Personally, I think it's a pretty good value. It works really well, and I'm really happy with it.